All right. Go ahead.
All right, welcome everyone. We'll be recording this session. I'll let Michael do the rest of the introduction and kick things off.
Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. Good morning. Good afternoon. Portland time. This is our first user group, user group of 2023. Welcome to January. We're right on time, 1 for 1 month, 1 meeting. Keep it going. My name is Michael Montez. I work for NORC. NORC is a research firm based out of Chicago. I'm based out of Portland. I work remote. If you need me for anything, I'm in Southeast Portland. Available for chats and whatever you need. And I am the co-leader of the admin group, along with Allison Rouse.
Hi everyone, I'm Allison. I work for a company called CS2 Marketing. We help people with their revenue operations tech stack, including Salesforce. Co-lead the user group with Michael. Been using Salesforce since forever, 2005, I think. Today's topic, we actually have a guest speaker, Grant, on the call, who's works with me at CS2 Marketing. So I'm really excited about today's topic. And then let's go through today's agenda. Michael.
Yep. So as you know, we're currently experiencing a welcome together. And then what we'll do is we'll go into a quick intro of everybody, and I'll call everybody's name down the list here. We've got about 12 attendees, minus 3, 9 or so. So we'll just do a quick hello, name, role, your experience, Salesforce. Anything else you want to add for the intro? A little bit of housekeeping after that, and then Mr. Booth will be sharing his technical debt remediation strategies with us. Following that, we will have a few Q&A, a little networking session if you'd like, things like that. Now there's a chat function as well, so if you'd like to pop your question into the chat during the presentation, feel free to. I think we've got a small enough crowd. If you want to just raise your hand or do something along those lines, we should be able to get to those questions in real time as well. But a chat would be great as well, just to write your question down. So as we said, we'll do some quick intros. I just got myself, Allison, you got yourself. I'm gonna go down the list here as I've got it alphabetical here. So Grant, why don't you say hello?
Hi everybody, Grant Booth. I work at CS2 Marketing. I've been working with Salesforce for 10 years now. I started off in Marketo support, where I became an expert in the Salesforce integration for Marketo, and then moved on to being a Marketo admin, and then a Salesforce admin, and now a consultant. So yeah, happy to be here and nice to meet you all.
Thank you, sir. Abigail, would you like to say hello?
I can unmute myself here. Hi all. You can call me Abby. I am a Salesforce admin for a few years now, depending how you count it. Kind of started as an accidental admin. I'm at Fall Creek Farm and Nursery in Eugene because our Eugene group ended. So I'm hopping on to the Portland one.
Well, welcome. We take all kinds, mostly within a 50-mile radius. But we will expand as needed as well. Chris Lillard.
Hi, everybody. My name's Chris. It's my first Salesforce meeting I've ever attended. I'm brand new to the ecosystem, so I'm mostly just here to say hi, introduce myself, see if I can learn something, and yeah, meet as many people as I can. Getting started on Trailhead and studying to become an administrator and get certified, and yeah, so very open to all any helpful tips to learn and suggestions on where to get started.
No problem. Welcome. We've all experience levels are here, and all are welcome as court, of course. Corinne Brown.
Hi, I work for a small nonprofit and I'm a solo admin and do actually mostly program work and do admin on the side whenever possible. So I feel like technical debt is where I live all the time. And so any support in doing that, I never feel like I'm caught up. So I appreciate this meeting.
Well, welcome. Hopefully, we've definitely got some good tips here for you. So welcome about Dan Donan.
I'm Dan. I currently lead what we call our platform team at Cash App, which is, for all intents and purposes, custom development and architecture. I've been inside the Salesforce ecosystem for like 10 years, doing a bunch of random things, wearing a bunch of random hats, but I haven't actually been hands-on in like a year and a half. So, yeah.
All right. Well, hope it gets you get your sea legs back. Evan Johnson.
Hey guys, Evan here. I'm in the same boat. I lead up the BizApps team of a tech company called Podium. I've been in the Salesforce world for, I think, 15 years now, 2008. So a bit of a long time there. I love tech debt. I love introducing it. I love fixing it. I'm all about this. So
Definitely. I've been known to eat a big meal just so I can go for a jog later and try to work it all off. So it's put on a lot of calories, put on some weight, and then try to get rid of it. That's the tech debt equivalent of my stomach. Julie Sherwood.
Hi, my name is Julia, and my role title is Data Systems Administrator. I work for McKinsey River Trust in Eugene, similarly, just looking to connect with some folks who are local. So it's good to know about the local Eugene connection there. And yeah, I've been working in Salesforce years total, but I feel pretty new in a lot of ways. And I think particularly like this topic, I'm interested in kind of how do I keep my org clean? Yeah.
Thank you, Julia. Sorry about that. I always miss letters at the end of names. I called one of my friends that I had known for many, many years Diana instead of Diane, and I don't know why. It just never worked. So I apologize, Julia. Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura, and I'm actually new to the Portland area. I moved from the San Francisco Bay Area. I work for learning.com as the RevOps system administrator, and we're a team of 2. So I transitioned out of the chemistry lab in late 2018. I worked as a user and philanthropy field, and then I did nonprofit. Sounds funny, nonprofit sales, but I did sales and marketing. So it was like a database service that for research, for science, and now I'm at learning.com.
Welcome. Miguel Hernandez.
Hello all, my name is Miguel. I'm a Salesforce admin at Elastic. It's a company based out of Mountain View in California. I'm also new to the Portland area. I've been living here for probably about 2 years now. Before that, I was in the Navy. I was an aircraft mechanic, so something completely different than what I'm used to. And yeah, I'm here to learn about tech debt as well. So nice to meet all of you.
Welcome. Nate Smith.
Oh, hello everyone. My name is Nathan. I am in the Tigard area. I work for Lithia Driveway. Been in the Portland area about 7 years. And I actually am talent acquisition or recruiting internally for Lithia. And I spend all day talking to Salesforce principal, staff, engineers. And I thought it'd be nice to be able to know a little bit about what I'm talking about and to meet others in the Portland area. So just wanted to say hi.
Welcome. Sally.
Okay. Hey everyone. Let's see. I've been in Salesforce as like an admin for maybe a year and a half. And I started out at a nonprofit where I was the only admin, and now I'm working for the standard. So I'm like one of 20 admins or 25 admins or something. So it's completely different, but a lot of fun. And what else? Oh, yeah, I'm in the Tigard area also, and my office is downtown, but I've been to my office like once, so, but, you know.
Oh, welcome. Is it Shahon?
Sorry about that. It's just Sean. Oh, wow, that's really bad. Sorry for that. My camera's all over the place. I'll move this so that I can look you in the eyes. Anyway, I am a senior engineering manager for Lithium Driveway over fulfillment, and we are focused on building out a new Salesforce instance. And so I'm new to Salesforce. I'm in the Tigard area. So I thought this might be a good place to meet some folks. So
Definitely is. Great place. And this is just the virtual stuff. Wait till we get live when we start having a few Coca-Colas. Things get really friendly. Last but not least, Andrew Shanks.
Hi, my name is Andrew Shanks. Sorry for being late. Just got back from a little jog. I'm the Salesforce admin for the Oregon Humane Society and run the nonprofit group here in Portland. I live out in the Beaverton area.
Welcome back, sir. All right, Allison, next slide.
All right. So this is our standard like housekeeping slide that we use both when we do in-person events as well as virtual. So we have some humorous notes here about the Wi-Fi and the bathroom. And just so you all know, we are recording this session so that if you want to refer to it later, for the folks who weren't able to attend, they can listen to it. So that recording will be available after the meeting via Bevy. Just a note on future meetings. We do plan to have more meetings this year, both in person and online, both social and educational. If you have an idea for a topic or a speaker that you'd like to present at our user group meetings, please let us know. We're always looking for speakers, venues, topics, anything. This is not our group, it's your group. So please reach out if you have any ideas for future meetings. If you have questions or comments during today's meeting, it's not a super large group, so you can probably unmute, but there's also the chat or the Q&A feed where you can write out your questions there. And then also just another note about future meetings is that we do have a small swag budget. So if you would like to speak at a future meeting, we will reward you with a swag item like a shirt or a hat or a water bottle or something fun. So
and hopefully useful. We will try to get you something that you actually will use.
Yes. So yeah, and so without further ado, I will hand it over to our guest speaker today, Grant, who will give us his guide on tech debt remediation, and yeah, should be a good topic. So Grant, over to you.
Thanks, Allison, and thanks, Michael. Yeah, nice to meet everyone. God, I wish I could be meeting everybody in person, but this is awesome to be able to do this. And this is actually my first PDX admin user group meeting I've been able to join. I feel like I always have some sort of conflict that comes up, but I'd really like to be more of a regular attendee in the future. So without further ado, make sure I'm sharing the right screen here. So I'm going to have kind of a particular focus on technical debt, more focused around automation than other aspects of it. So, as I'm sure most people know, there's a lot of different forms of technical debt, different reasons you have technical debt. Sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's accidental. Like sometimes you're adding technical debt to something because you're just trying to get it done and out the door quickly, and you've got a deadline to meet, and so you do the best you can with the resources you have at the time, and then you move on. You can't necessarily spend all of your time in like the planning stage and like trying to maximize the absolute best way of building something. Sometimes you just have to build it and move on with your day, right? And then, of course, with Salesforce, the tools change over time, right? So 5 years ago, you were using Process Builder for a lot of the more advanced things you would do with point and click automation, trying to avoid using Apex for things if you're not a developer, right? And today it's Flow. And I've found that when it comes to identifying like what are the biggest contributors to problems in the system and figuring out what to prioritize and showing the value of a technical debt remediation project so that you can actually say get approval from your manager or whoever to actually spend time say rebuilding those old process builders as flows. Like that can be a challenge in and of itself. And so actually having some metrics available to show the value of the project and be able to share with someone maybe higher up who doesn't understand a lot about Salesforce and isn't going to follow all of your jargon, but can appreciate something like integrations are able to insert new records 60% faster or something like that. Being able to actually have that data, understand the data, and interpret it is pretty useful in my opinion. So this slide deck wasn't meant specifically for this group. It's something that I built for our customers to pitch the idea of a technical debt remediation project to them. And yeah, very, very broad topic. What is technical debt? But I'm kind of trying to focus on like what are the key things that I'm going to be addressing and where the problems come from. I just bought my house in North Portland a little over a year ago, so I'll generally make references to house maintenance. But this was a comic strip I found that I really liked where, like, why does it take so long to add a new window, right? Well, the house is falling apart. Not so simple. So the key metric that I'm going to be focusing on is the CPU limit. I'm sure a lot of you have run into CPU limit errors, right? Where if you're trying to do an operation in Salesforce to insert records or update records, or I suppose delete records, Salesforce enforces that 10-second limit for the operation to actually finish. It doesn't always actually enforce the 10 seconds. It's more like it reserves the right to cut it off at 10 seconds and roll your changes back. And that can mean, for example, that Marketo, so you have a list import in Marketo, or you did an email blast and now a bunch of people are coming in off of your website into Marketo. And as a result, it's trying to sync records up to Salesforce in batches of 200, which for the regular like REST API, that's going to be your batch size typically. Sync up to 200 records at a time in a single operation. And so there's, I mean, for example, people might have built things and only been testing it with like one record at a time. Like, oh, it works great when I like actually go into the UI and create a single lead or update a single contact or whatever it is. But what you've really got to be concerned about is bulk updates. And so it's, in my opinion, very important to do bulk testing when you're building things before you move it from sandbox to production. And so it's a pretty common error that, in my experience working in Marketo, people would run into, where it's trying to sync up those 200 records at a time. It hits the CPU limit error because the operation is taking longer than 10 seconds. And then the data isn't syncing to Salesforce. And data problems mean money problems. So, skipping around a little bit. And so what I've been doing for our customers in these projects is having a focus on looking at their old automation and prioritizing what to replace or to flat out deprecate. Sometimes like half the value of this project is actually just realizing that there's a lot of things that are still running that don't need to be running and can actually just be turned off. Like you share it with them and the customer is like, oh, we haven't used that in years. Like you can just turn that off, but it's one of several process builders that was running and contributing to the problems they were seeing. So here in the slide, I linked to the Salesforce Architects Record Triggered Automation Guide, which is really great for understanding what to use when. For example, I feel like it would be a whole other talk to dive into like the differences between before save flows, after save flows, using an asynchronous path in an after save flow, when you actually do need to use Apex and can't just use a flow, understanding all these different scenarios. And this guide is really useful. And one of the slides that I love to share, or one of the images from this that I like to share, if I can find it. Here we go. This is talking about CPU time overhead for a single record save when the automation is updating the same record that triggered the automation. So like, say an update to a lead triggering automation on the lead, and the automation also updating the lead. But it's comparing different methods of doing automation. Obviously, using before save Apex code, very, very efficient. Process builder is all the way down here at the right. Before save flow is the second one here, so like 1.16 milliseconds compared to 150 milliseconds. So 150 times more efficient if you're able to use a before save flow to do a same record update. That is huge. And what I've seen for many customers is they might have like 8 process builders, like separate process builders running per object on some of those like core Salesforce objects like lead, contact, opportunity, account. And so I've made the focus of these projects, really the biggest focus, just analyzing those process builders, figuring out like if there's anything that we can just turn off, then do that. For the things that need to stay, replacing them with either a before save flow or an after save asynchronous flow, if it's the kind of change that like they still want the record to save, but then whatever the automation is doing is more like a nice to have afterwards. Or in some cases, you just need a regular after save flow, which is this column here, which is still more efficient compared to a process builder. So how did they come up with these numbers though? Where does this chart come from? Well, that's something that you can actually do by generating log files and analyzing them with Visual Studio Code. And it's not something that you actually need to be able to code for, this particular aspect of it. So I know I mentioned like Visual Studio Code, and anybody who hasn't worked with Apex probably wants to like run the other way. Don't worry, this part of it doesn't really have anything to do with code. You just need this tool to do it. But so when I share this with a customer, this is a sample from a particular customer where we ran some tests before the changes we made versus after the changes we made, and we're able to actually get it out on a chart where it breaks it down based on what kind of automation is running. If I can make that, if I can make that a little bit bigger. There we go. All right. So this is CPU usage in milliseconds, or time, the time that the operation took in milliseconds is maybe the more accurate way to put it. But here you can see, and this is for leads, of course. I think they had 8 active process builders on the lead object, and you can see that that is by far the biggest contributor. Most of the changes that we did were just replacing process builders with flows. And then, so the red here is before our changes and blue is after the changes. And I found that the time that everything else seemed to take was also reduced. And then here is a chart, zoom back out, for an insert of 25 opportunities. Likewise, you can see this one's not as bad as the lead object, surprisingly, but still a lot going on. And process builders, again, being the biggest contributor. So how did I actually get this data? I'll walk through that now. So the first thing I did was, for the customer, I spun up a couple of sandboxes. One, this one's CS2 test, was meant to preserve the state of their production environment when we started the project. And we didn't make any changes in here. Versus this other one that's the bright green tab, just CS2 is the name of the sandbox. That is where we were actually staging our changes. So as we wrapped up the project, I ran tests in the unchanged sandbox versus the changed sandbox, and I was able to compare. First thing I did was I put together a spreadsheet with some test data in it. So for example, I'll just run through this for opportunities. And I'll have to double check that these IDs are still valid. Maybe it'd be easier to do one for leads. Yeah, I'll do it for leads. I don't know if these related IDs for account and contact are still valid. So let's do an import of 100 leads. So I put together a very basic list, and this is kind of one of the weaknesses of the test data, is that it doesn't necessarily include all the fields that are going to be firing all the automation, right? Like for example, real updates to the system are probably going to be updating other fields that aren't included here. This is just like a very basic bare minimum to test inserting 100 leads. But so I gather that together. And if I did this over, I'd probably make sure that all the first names and last names are randomly generated, and that the email address doesn't have the same domain. That way I'm not triggering any dupe catching automation or something like that. But let me go ahead and I'll just do 50 of them. I'm going to copy that, go in here to the unchanged environment. And I've been using the Salesforce inspector to do my imports as long as I'm under a few thousand records. I find it just much easier to do things here than in Data Loader. I can choose insert a lead, and I can just paste my copied spreadsheet right here. And let's set that to 1. I don't need to change the batch size because I'm only doing 50 records. Oh, and I'll note back here, so I mentioned 200 records being an important batch size. I'm only showing 100 records here because when I tried to do 200, I got CPU limit errors, right? Which is part of the justification for why this needed to happen. But so I'll just do an import of 50 records. And before let me back up. I need to bring open the developer console so that I can actually get the log easily. All right, so there's the developer console. Now I'm gonna use the Salesforce Inspector Chrome extension to do the import. As long as the API name is correct, it auto maps here, which is nice. And that'll take a second. There we go. So it successfully inserted them. And then here I've got some log files I can download. Now, obviously it's not going to be these tiny files. It's going to be the one with the larger file size. And to download that, you can just right click on it and download log. One thing to be aware of here, where is it? View. I'm trying to remember, Michael, do you know where I can set the log levels? Like for making sure it's set to fine, something like that. I'm trying to remember where that was.
It's under test.
I was going to say Dan knows.
Yeah.
It's either test or debug, I'm pretty sure.
I think perspective manager, I think it is.
Also, I don't know if your screen's frozen for anybody else.
It's not for me.
Oh.
I can see it, but I don't know. Can others see it?
Oh, that's it. Change log levels. That's what I was looking for.
Not frozen for me.
Okay.
Cool. There we go. And I probably should have gone through and set these to finest earlier. It's just like the level of detail that it's bringing in. But we'll go ahead and try it without that, since I already did the import. All right, so I can download that. I just right click on the log file down here in the bottom and hit download log. And then I will bring that up in Visual Studio Code. 1 second. Okay. So here's the log file, and now I go through this line by line and figure everything out. Just kidding. If you have the right extensions running in here, which I think it's Apex Log Analysis is the extension name, if I remember right. But you can just, once you open up the log file, you can right click and choose this log, show Apex and Log Analysis. And it'll default to this like timeline that I haven't really had the chance to look very closely at. But the main thing I've been using is this analysis tab, which will order everything by what's taking the longest. And I noticed they made, this may have to do with my log level, like detail level that I mentioned earlier, but it's not always clear what's flow versus process builder, right? Because process builder is sort of like just a very old version of flow. from what I understand. But basically you can copy this and then actually getting it into like a CSV format to use and say a spreadsheet is slightly annoying. Maybe I just need to find the right tool. But I'll copy this. Just bring it into a text file and do a find and replace and just kind of manipulate this into being a CSV. So if I replace \n with a comma, \n just being a line break, right? Then I've got to use that. There we go. Regex. There we go. Now it's just made everything comma separated. And I can go through this and manipulate it until it's a CSV. You get the idea there. I'm not going to walk through the whole thing, but once I have it in that right like CSV format, save that as a CSV, then I can bring it into say Google Sheets or Excel, and then get the data that I need to actually generate these charts. And one second, let me actually bring that up. Never share your screen while you're searching for stuff in Google Drive, right? All right, so this is what I shared with the customer that actually has the data here in it. But basically I reran that same test after changes, kind of put the charts together based on the method name here. And then I was able to assemble these graphs that have like our before versus after. So that's one nice metric. And then the last metric that I put together for this like before versus after analysis was I would do that same data import using the Salesforce inspector, and I would just like use my cell phone with like the stopwatch app basically to test how long the import takes. I'd run 5 tests and then take an average time. And that's how I was able to come up with this slide. So for example, an admin doing an import of 100 leads in bulk, I found it changed from an average of a little over 14 seconds to 5.7, which is a 60% reduction. Which for anybody who's spent a whole lot of time doing really massive like imports or updates, you know, having to set your batch size to like 10 opportunities or something as you update all of the opportunities in your instance when somebody wanted to add a new field, for example, having that 60% time shaved off is pretty nice. This slide is just walking through kind of like what this tech debt process looks like. So starting with all of that analysis, figuring out where to prioritize, cataloging all of the automation. So back on this spreadsheet, I don't think there's any personal data that'll show up in here. So listing all of those process builders, a short description of what it does and what I recommend replacing it with, doing like a difficulty versus benefit matrix. Other notes, you know, what are the things that are like a quick win? Like this is something I think that we can just turn off. This is something that I think would be super easy to set up as a flow. And then keeping track of whether or not it was replaced in sandbox test cases to make sure that I did the testing and we're certain that the, say, new flow works the way we would expect it to. And then being able to run through this with the customer and show all of that work, actually show what we did and our whole thought process behind it. And then I think being able to do that before versus after analysis is really key for people being able to show the value of the project, right? Like in our case, we're an agency, we're being paid to do this work. The marketing or sales ops teams who are paying us to do that work need to be able to show it to their like department managers to show that value. And that was really key for us in being able to pitch it and really prioritize that work. Key word here is low-hanging fruit. Right? Like one of the issues with process builders is that for any new or updated record, it's going to run that process builder and check each decision within the process builder to see if that record qualifies for it. And so it has a high cost whether the process builder is doing anything that's actually relevant to that record or not. And one of the ways that flows are great is that you can have filters on the entry criteria to make sure that the only people running through the flow or the only records running through the flow are records that the flow is actually relevant to and needs to do something to. Yeah, low-hanging fruit is really like the key phrase. You start with the things that are kind of like easy wins, and then you move on from there. Really, if there were like a single takeaway that I'd want to make sure that people have, it's that you should learn how to use flow and get good with using flow, because building a bad flow might be worse than doing nothing. It's a very powerful tool. It's depending on the complexity of what you're trying to do, it gives you a lot of opportunity to break things or just create whole new problems. Solve one problem, create 3 more. And replace your process builders with flows. And that's the core of what I wanted to share.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I don't, sorry. I was wondering if, I don't want to raise my hand, so can I just ask a question?
Yeah,
of course.
Sorry, and I'm over here now. Sorry. So,
Stage show.
I was just curious, as a system becomes more complex over time, maybe your strategy by which you engage different technologies needs to change. And I was wondering if you could speak at all to that insight here. Obviously, your approach here is to eliminate unused and to that, right, unused complexity as well. Could you speak at all to like how you evolve your Salesforce instance so that maybe you evolve to a change to respond to added complexity when it comes to these business flows? Do you have any strategies, I guess, is really my question.
So as the business evolves and grows, how does that strategy evolve?
Yeah, like I can see you starting with like process builder and then move on to flows because, the cost of running it, but then I could see like you get to so much complexity in the flows that it slows down or it's just hard to work with, and just wondering if you could speak to like, how do you know when it's time to move to code is another way to say it.
Well, that's, yeah. So I think a couple of things to break apart there. For anything you're building now, you shouldn't use process builder at all. It's just the old tool. And so if you see process builders running in your instance, they're probably just old. Before before Flow really existed, or before Flow had been built up enough that it had all of the same functionality. Yeah, bottom line, if you're building something new, like, don't use Process Builder. You will run into packages, including like unmanaged packages that are using Process Builder because for whatever reason the company offering it hasn't updated it. I'm not going to name any names, but they're out there. But really, you shouldn't really be seeing any new Process Builders. It's more just, it was the best tool at the time 5 years ago, and that's why they're there. And those are like approximate time estimates. I don't remember the whole timeline of when everything changed with Flow versus Process Builder. Sorry if I'm giving any inaccurate info there. As far as,
well, I was going to just jump in real quick as well and say, one of the keys to helping this not get out of control is having a really, I want to say it has to be tight, but having a decent amount of documentation on what you built and what it's going to be doing, so that as the next request comes in and you want to layer on, you can look back and say, oh yeah, we're doing something that has that entry criteria or is doing something similar. And then you want to layer on and start to build those out so you know that. I think Allison has a document or something that shows kind of like when they do a handoff to their team. This is what, there's like a break it down in a very nice way. It's like, this is what this does. This is why you should care. This is what we need to think about if we're ever going to make these kinds of changes or add on to it. So documentation is very, very helpful with not letting these things get out of control, like crazy out of control. And then coming up with a strategy around how are you going to do your items. Is it going to be one flow for everything, or we're going to break it up into really specific, launch points, things like that. So I'll let somebody else speak to that because there's a lot of people here who are doing.
I can share what we do for our clients is what we try to do is create a flow dictionary that includes like the name and the link to the flow, the object, what kind of trigger it is. We have a category for like what project was this part of, so that they can kind of filter to what is everything that touches our lead life cycle versus our account hierarchy. And then a business reason for the automation, what action the automation does. And then this is really key, is like, when would I have to update this flow? What are the considerations for future updates? What would, if we got rid of, in this case, Clearbit, then we would probably have to reevaluate this flow because it looks like Clearbit fields, and then any other supporting documentation about that. So having this flow dictionary has been super helpful, especially with some of our clients that have turnover and they have new Salesforce admins that come on and they want to quickly understand their environment. This has been really helpful. So this is something that we're trying to do for all of our clients, but just kind of a best practice is to have that documentation so that it doesn't become the Wild West just as flows again.
Got it. So you're speaking to how to manage the knowledge around the complexity, which is great. Thank you. The question also goes back to Grant on performance, like your graph around the number of milliseconds for each. And obviously you've been clear about Process Builder, but even in, I don't know if it was tens or to hundreds of milliseconds, can't remember, for Flow. And obviously there's some filtering you spoke to, like, filtering, so not every single record has to be evaluated by the engine, so to speak. Do you have any, is it just a matter of partitioning those filters in a way that reduces the overall performance? Because I can imagine, obviously, probably the list would get unwieldy on just the knowledge base if it got so long. That being said, the stack can add up. It's a ton of feathers still weighs a ton. So is it a partitioning strategy with filters or something like that allows you to kind of cut down on the performance add or cost of that stack?
So, speaking at a very engineer and architect level, what you're really talking about is an automation framework and understanding what the automation lift is to which tool in the box you should use, along with understanding something as silly as like naming conventions. And do you start to build out the concept of treating flows like methods or classes and having everything called? Do you chain them together? Do you have very specific flow, like entry criteria that only the minimum viable things are firing? Are you calling out to external systems? I know you mentioned that you guys are kind of implementing Salesforce. The one thing I will stress beyond belief is go find a very smart architect and get them in to understand your business case. So a lot of the questions that you're asking are answered up front, and you can go into it without doing what almost everyone here has probably done, which is for now becomes forever. And then 2 years later, you're unbuilding the for now at a cost significantly greater than had you paid the expensive architect up front.
It's funny that you say that. So I'll just end with that. That's exactly what we're on the hunt for right now as technical architects. If you know any good ones, let me know.
Have you seen the movie Groundhog Day?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the strategy, so it sounds like you're talking about like if I'm building out a flow architecture, right? Like, am I going to have one flow that requests a bunch of other flows for each object, right? But like one base flow for the object versus a variety of flows, and how do you decide how many you're going to make and when they trigger and so on. One of the nice things with flows is that you can filter the entry criteria, so there's not, from what I've seen, like a big performance difference between having one triggered flow that then requests other flows versus like a different flow for each business process. My preference is that if it's more or less the same business process, so maybe like stages changing on an opportunity, right? Do like a single flow that's handling stages changing. But that doesn't mean that it has to be like your only flow running on the opportunity object, if that makes sense. It does get unwieldy. You know, flow is really powerful, and I think it offers a lot of opportunity for people to introduce technical debt, which is just kind of an inevitability of the business to one extent. I don't know. It's unless you have a really reliable and long-term, not going anywhere, in-house Salesforce developer, then being able to do a lot of the things that you can do now with Flow compared to using Apex is pretty nice.
Well, thank you all for that. I got a lot out of that, so thank you for tackling that question. I appreciate it.
Yeah, follow-up questions. Anybody else? Let's see, I'm sorry. Laura, did you got the answer to your question about where to find the milliseconds?
Yeah, I think so. I'll take a look at it. I'm going through a massive tech debt right now, and I am the first Salesforce administrator with like massive legacy process builders that have like, I don't know how many layers to them. And we have our tech stacks pretty thick. So I'm glad to have been here in this session. Thank you, Grant, for some ideas, and hopefully we can reach out to each other. And I mean, not just you, Grant, but other people here. So yeah. A lot. I'm not an architect by far, so it's kind of a lot to handle.
Me neither. I'm also not really a developer. I'm one of those admins who dabbles in Apex, and so
I wouldn't have known, actually.
I've
you explained it very well.
Doing something like this, I'm spending a lot of time watching YouTube and trying different things. yeah, you had a question about finding the milliseconds?
Yeah, I think it was more of just what I guess application you were using to get the information, and then eventually you walk through it. So
okay, got it. Yeah.
But thank you.
Yeah, we could probably have a whole nother session on like Visual Studio, which is what Grant was using for that. But there's a couple of ways to do it too, other ways to do it. But Visual Studio's been super helpful for debugging stuff.
But it kind of seems like it's the tool that Salesforce is pushing people to use for like all development.
Yeah.
My impression. So all the new stuff is going into Visual Studio Code.
Yeah, I mean the visualizations alone are getting that into a CSV that you can visualize is incredibly powerful for anybody who's ever talked to anybody who's asked them to fix something, because showing them the results, showing them what the results could be, even if you were to just trying to make a case to do some tech debt remediation, I'm going to take this one and I'm going to fix it, and then I'm going to show you the difference between the two, just if it's just one piece, one process builder replaced with 1, 2, 3, 4 flows. It's the before and the after. And now take that and imagine if we have 67 process builders that are currently in there, what we could do, what our timeline, what our time savings could be. Where are people complaining? Who's asking us to do things? Who's complaining about the system? Generally salespeople, end users who get stuck. They're the ones who get stuck behind this wall of waiting. So if you can just kind of take one example, visualize it in such a way, and then give that to your higher ups to get the green light. It does take time. I mean, tech debt is not a hobby. It is something you have to take, and you have to make time for. You to carve out a day out of your week to just focus on that thing, because what you don't want to do, and what a lot of people do, is you start doing some of it, but you don't have that kind of window, and then you get Slack and Ping and Teams and everybody comes at you, and it's pushed to the side because it doesn't have that gravitas of somebody's issue right then and there. So attacking tech debt is it's a thing that has to be done. It has to be a part of your workday. So selling it is one way, but visualizing it and selling it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, this is a great way to sell it too, because like the user experience benefits alone, if it's taking somebody 30 seconds to create an opportunity and now it's going to take 5 seconds, like that's huge.
Yeah. In the case of the particular customer I was sharing the graphs from, they like the main thing on their mind was that they got a lot of alert emails about CPU limit errors, which is like, I mean, that's annoying, right? Getting a bunch of alert emails, but like just making sure that means the data is failing, like it's not making its way into Salesforce. It rolls back the changes if it hits the CPU limit error. But it is a really abstract thing that's hard to explain to like an executive. But executives love charts, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, the alert emails are annoying, but also kind of frightening that there's that much just data not getting updated and potential like opportunities on the table that never get addressed because the salesperson doesn't get the alert that this person requested contact or whatever it is that doesn't get updated.
Right. Yeah, if the lead status doesn't actually change to MQL, for example, because it hit CPU limit errors, well then that's a problem.
Yeah. Well, I know we are coming up. Well, we're a little bit over the hour. Does anyone have any final questions?
Well, Evan, I see you preparing to ask.
Just wanted Grant to know that I was listening and enjoying every minute of it. Great job. Good presentation.
Awesome. Well, thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Grant. This was a super valuable discussion. I think everybody learned something. So thank you so much for putting this together.
Of course. And hope to meet everybody in person sometime soon.
Yep. Well, we're looking to maybe do some sort of like happy hour or something in February. So look out for that. And then if anyone has any follow-up questions after this, definitely reach out. If you're interested in speaking, reach out. We'll send out the link to the recording as well. But thank you all for attending. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
If anybody has any information or has made the transition to the new change sets, away from change sets to the new tool, because it went GA or it's going GA.
DevOps Center.
DevOps Center, thank you. If anybody has any information about DevOps Center and they would love to present just what they found, what their experience has been, doesn't have to be like deep dive and all that stuff, would really appreciate that, because that is going to be a big thing this year. And I think we really want to get people involved in that. And I think it's something that's going to be really helpful for everybody, all of our admins in Portland and probably around the world, but whatever, we'll focus with right here. But I would really appreciate if somebody wants to share with us their findings with that as well. So spread the word. Thank you. Thank you, Grant.
Totally. Yeah, thanks all. I just threw my my LinkedIn into the chat there. If you are trying to, I don't know, get this to work on Visual Studio Code, something like that, have a question, send me a message with a screenshot and, you know, maybe I can help you out.
Awesome.
And would love to just connect in general and get to know you. So not to emphasize the wrong thing there.
Well, thanks a lot, Grant.
Thanks all.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining. We really appreciate it. And we will see you next month.
Thanks.
All right, see you.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.